Extended, presented by Lacrosse Flash.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Goal Line Extended. Today is Tuesday, March 30th, and my name is Ryan Holtzbus. Thank you all for joining us here for our third show of Goal Line Extended, a brand new show out of the Lacrosse Flash podcast network. Today, we have a rather massive show lined up. In a few moments, Inside Lacrosse's Kyle Devitte will be joining me to discuss some of the big storylines around the PLL Entry Draft, which took place this past Thursday night. The now 8 teams added a total of 24 professional players to their existing rosters, which will continue to get bigger as we move along through the offseason waiver wire and the upcoming college draft, which has been now pushed back to Monday, April 26th. It was originally scheduled for next Tuesday. I haven't seen an official statement by the league yet, but the PLL's Joe Keegan confirmed that to Lacrosse Flash yesterday. So the PLL college draft now on April 26th. Make sure to mark that on your calendars. But Kyle will be joining me shortly. Going into this draft, we had our eyes on a few teams in particular. The Cannons being that they are the 2021 expansion team, the Atlas, as they are in full-blown retool mode heading into Ben Rubier's second straight season at the helm. And the 2020 expansion team, the Water Dogs, one of the biggest losers in expansion. How are they going to rebound and reload in phase one of Andy Copeland's second offseason? And then Jordan Johnson will be joining me in a little bit to talk about a pretty exciting weekend in college lacrosse. Nothing too crazy, but we had a slate of really good games across the ACC, Big Ten, and the Patriot League gave us a few good ones too. Loyola, a week after putting up 24 against Bucknell, they fall to unranked Towson. TD Erlin made his 2021 debut for Denver. Jordan will be joining me in a little bit to discuss all of that. And to close out this show, Cannons head coach Sean Quirk will be joining me to discuss his 2021 offseason as the newest head coach in the PLL. He's been very busy this offseason, 2 drafts down, 1 more to go, and there's still so much talent available that wasn't grabbed in the entry draft. Make sure to stick around for that. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube. You can find it on Spotify, Anchor, and a handful of other podcast platforms. And you can follow the show on Instagram and Twitter at GL Extended. All of the links, as well as the Lacrosse Flash website and social media, will be down below in the description. Kyle Devitte, welcome to Goal Line Extended, and thank you for joining us. Every team got better on Thursday night. That's no surprise. All 24 players selected should contribute in a fairly significant way this season. Some guys will be starters. Other guys will be playing in, I guess, more specified roles. And then obviously you have your stars. It seems like the Cannons got 3 stars in this draft. Thompson at 1 was a no-brainer. Defensive midfielder Zach Goodrich fell to 6 to keep him in Cannons blue. And then goalie Nick Morocco, one of the top goalie prospects entering the league. Coach Quirk was able to keep him a Cannon by selecting him with the 17th overall pick. Kyle, the Cannons, they now have a full roster with these 3 additions. How much more does Quirk have to do before this team is ready to come opening weekend on June 4?
Well, I want to start with a correction, but it's Devitte. Literally no one calls me by my first name. So it's just Devitte. My mom calls me Devitte. It's really weird. So I think looking at what the Cannons did, first of all, they picked the best player in the world, Thompson. It's a no-brainer. The fact that Zach Goodrich was there at 6 was surprising. The fact that the Cannons took him was not, because he is the best defense only. Like, we're talking one-on-one, short stick, defensive midfielder. He is the best in the world at that part of being a short stick DMD, right? If you have him matched up, especially against someone that he is bigger, stronger, and faster than, that person is not going to get the shot they want. They might score. They might get a shot off. They might get an assist. They might get to a place that they feel a little comfortable with, but they're always going to have Goodrich in their pocket. And that's why he's so valuable. I'm surprised he fell to 6. So many teams wanted to draft him. But, him going back to the Cannons, that's a guy that Quirk needed. They don't have one of the things that these PLL teams maybe don't talk about as much, because it's not sexy to talk about short stick D-middies. Let's be real.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Right? That's not fun.
Don't tell some guys that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, don't tell the short stick D-middies I told you this, but they actually are really important.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So the fact that the Cannons get to start with someone they know they can deploy in several different manners, and someone that is tailor-made to make an impact in the PLL, maybe not as a transition player, but as a player that can be a guy that can stall out a first midi in an early offense going at them before the pole even gets on. That's the kind of thing that he can do. He's a disruptor on defense at the short stick position, which is not something that is common in the entire game of lacrosse, much less at the professional level. So his value, I think, can't be overstated. And I don't want to gloss over Lyle Thompson. I'm just like out of adjectives to describe Lyle Thompson. I'm out. Like what else do I say? I've seen him play in person, and his body twists in a way that makes me think his spine is built different. Like the way that he is able to bait with his stick, with his feet, his footwork, and then his ability to just turn. And all of a sudden the ball's out of his stick and it's a goal is unparalleled in the entire sport. So
the word I like to use is incredible. It's my word.
I mean, yes, there are many variations of that word that you could use to describe Lyle. He's just so good. And what he does for the Cannons is he brings them the real talisman that you need to build a team, the cornerstone that you need to build a team around, because it's not Rabel. Like Rabel is a good player still. Everyone's kind of like down on him. We were talking about this before we started recording. He didn't have a great bubble. Like no one knows that more than him. That's the thing. Like no one knows that more. No, you don't need to throw, you shot 5% at his face. He knows. You know what I mean? Like he's not going to come back and do the same. And I don't think he's going to come back and expect to be an MVP caliber player either, especially if he's on the same team with Lyle. But having Lyle on your team, pretty good way to get the ball in your stick.
Oh yeah. Just being that role player around him and facilitating off of him should work wonders for Paul. Definitely getting open shots as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to touch on Morocco, I think the only other team that would have drafted Morocco is the Water Dogs, because they're the team I think had a direct need. Just looking at their save percentages and the performance of their goalies, putting DeLuca in at the end, and kind of like, is he the answer? I don't know. Morocco is better than any goalie they have on their roster. So that would have been a other place for him to go. But where else would he go? He's not going to go. Like, might as well go home with Quirk, where he won a championship. That makes sense. All these picks for the Cannons make sense. I cannot and will not say the same for all the teams we're going to talk about today, that being the case. But for the Cannons, every single one of these picks makes complete sense and is an upgrade from zero, because we're starting at zero, but it's actually an upgrade over everyone else's 1, 2, or 3.
Oh yeah.
So that's very important. And, the Cannons aren't going to be pushovers with these 3 guys on their roster.
Let's talk about one of those teams that I know you weren't too thrilled with their selections. We've been kind of keeping a close eye on the Atlas. Rubier obviously traded Pennell, Rabel, and Ryan Brown to compile some more draft capital. He used one of those picks on attackman Dan Pucaro, 3rd overall. That originally belonged to the Redwoods. He also added Michael Rexroad, defenseman out of Rutgers, 9th overall. That originally belonged to the Cannons. That thought going into this was that Rubier was going to add, those attackmen and defensemen in this draft. As we see, he added 2 of each. I know you don't like these selections, though, as you were mentioning earlier. Why don't you like these selections? What could they have done with what was available on the board?
Here's the thing. Bocaro is great. Like this is a great player. But he's only played like 5 games. So how do you know that he's going to maintain that level of excellence through a full season? You don't, to be fair. He probably will. He's a very good player, but he has an injury history. He is coming in. He kind of was hobbled in a couple games that maybe we didn't notice because the Outlaws were such a complete team, and he did so many different things that if he took a couple plays off, you wouldn't even notice. I'm not saying he did, but if he did do that, you probably wouldn't notice. He's a great player. I don't think you build a team around him. I think the Atlas are waiting for the college draft to get their hands on Michael Sowers to build their team around. And if that's the case, like, Bucaro's a great pick for that, provided he stays healthy and buys into the system. Rexroad would have been there later. I think he's good.
I'm on board with that as well. I agree with you there.
I just don't think anyone was going to pick him at all. He's basically Callum Robinson, but with better feet, and he doesn't run out and get smoked on the perimeter. So you're getting a 3rd defender there, right? Like, you're getting a hard checking, hard sliding defender that's capable and confident. Great. You can get that later. The Andrew Newbold pick makes 0 sense to me.
Okay.
Just 0. I like, and it's not that I think Newbold's terrible. I think no one else was going to pick him. So you could have just got him in the waivers that are happening this week. You essentially burned that pick. Brendan Sunday is good, but what is he? Is he a starting attackman in the PLL? I don't think he is. Is he a first line midi in the PLL? It depends on the system you're running. Is he an amazing second line offensive midi in the PLL? Absolutely. He's a matchup nightmare. The problem is he doesn't create his own offense. He's very much a high crease, big body. He sets great picks. He comes off picks. Like, he does a lot of great work. I don't know if anyone's going to draft him either. So either Rubiar knows something that all of these other coaches and me and everyone else that does analysis know, like, we don't know. He knows. Or these picks aren't amazing, which, I'm sorry, Occam's razor, they're not amazing to me.
Andy Copeland went with Liam Burns with the 4th overall selection, making him the second pull, first LSM off the board. He followed it up with Mikey Schlosser at 12 and defenseman Ben Randall at 20th overall. Pretty steep fall from where I think a lot of people expected him to get drafted, but nonetheless, 2 defensemen and athletic midfielder to round out this draft after a really tough expansion season. The Water Dogs, they're back in business. How should these 3 guys fit in down the stretch for this Water Dogs team?
Yeah, I don't know if Burns is going to keep playing LSM in the MLL or the PLL. Because in the MLL, even, he wasn't playing a lot of LSM. He would handle the ball a lot and he would facilitate the clear, but he wasn't always, he played deep. So I think in the PLL, he's going to play deeper and be kind of a secondary guy next to Ryland Reese, who's I think is their guy. I love Mikey Schlosser. I am on the fan club. I've met him. He's hilarious. He's fantastic. I think he is something that they don't have, which is a midfielder with a straight up and down goal and ability to get past his defender. Schlosser can beat poles. He can beat strong SSDMs. He can beat kind of the third. If you put the third guy on him in your rope unit, he will make you pay. He'll pull you all the way up. And in the PLL, here's the other thing too. I think the loss of that 10 yards in the middle is going to be hard for him to adjust to at first, because he loves bringing guys out for a little run, right? The golden retriever just wants to take a walk around the neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? And then he'll burst down the road and toast you. So I think that'll be a little bit of an adjustment, but it's not like he's not a good lacrosse player. Like, he'll figure it out. That's the thing. I think some guys take longer than others to adjust. And I think you'll see with a lot of these picks, it will take a little time for them to adjust to the short shot clock, especially if they don't have indoor experience with the shot clock in that environment as well. So I love Schlosser just because he's different from everyone else they have on the roster, who is exactly the same player, who is a tweener. I'm an attackman. I'm a midfielder. I can dodge from anywhere. Here's where I like to go. Oh, that's you? Am I looking in a mirror? Am I a clone? I don't know. That's the entire Water Dogs roster. Okay. So those 2 guys give them depth. I think Burns slots in right away as a starter. Like, I don't know if he's the one, but I think, and I don't know if Randall's the one. They're both, in my mind, they're both number 2 guys.
Okay.
Which is fine. Like, that's better than a lot of other teams have. And then you add in BJ Grill. If you start all 3 of those guys, that's a good defense. That's a much better defense than they rolled out last year in terms of sheer ability to cover. Right? That's a good cover defense. The reason I think Randall slipped is because he's basically a beleaguered defenseman, right? Like, he led the Lizards defense when he had no help. He had guys playing on that, different guys playing in that defense every week. And they were just like, Ben, can you just guard the best guy? And like, listen, no defenseman wants to guard the best guy every week. Like, you can say that you do, but like, some weeks you're just like, can I guard the second best guy? And Ben Randall never got a chance to do that his entire pro career. I'm sure he got to do it in college, but in the pros, they were just like, hey, listen, you got to guard Lyle Thompson. And then like the next week he has to guard like Kevin Rice, like they're also totally different guys. And listen, guys got points on him, but he put in the work, right? He made it hard for them to score, which when you're a defenseman, especially at the highest level, your job is not to strip the ball. It's not to like throw a hammer check and break the other guy's stick in half. It's not to get a turnover. It's not to then pick up the ball and run down and score a goal. That's never your job now. Your job now is to make the attackman that you are guarding's life more difficult. And Ben Randall is very good at that. Is he elite? I don't know. Liam Burns is also very good at that. That's why I think they're both kind of in that number 2 discussion. And with Burns having the addition of being able to spell, Reese on the wings for draws, and his ball handling ability is better than Randall's. But I think the Water Dogs had a good draft. And I don't want this to sound terrible, but I was surprised because I was not a fan of how they built their team at all when they were built.
See how they go about building the rest of their team here going into the 2021 season. You're reiterating pretty much exactly what my high school coach would say about playing defense. It's not to take the ball away. It's just make your guy, his life miserable and make him move the ball. Pretty much is the name of the game there, playing defense. A player that got taken a little sooner than you expected, who would that be?
Oh, sooner? I mean, I'm surprised Isaiah Davis-Allen got drafted.
Okay. I selected for our Flash mock draft for the Whip Snakes, and I had him going fairly early. I believe their first pick.
Here's the thing with him. Like he actually is in the best situation where he doesn't have to be the 1 or the 2 SSDM. Like he's got P. Harb and Jack Neer in front of him. It's fine. That's a great situation for him to be in. The thing is he gets run by. He has been pushing out for the Bay. If you watch tape on him, he gets run by a fair amount, and he's not great defending GLE. So where he is good is that he's a great outlet runner. He is excellent getting back in transition and stopping the ball. He's very fundamental in all the other aspects that you need to be a pro, right? Like I'm not saying he's like a bad pro. I'm saying his strengths and weaknesses are very different from what PLL coaches, in my opinion, would value the most. However, in the PLL, as we know, very transition, like when it's open, which the Pubble was very different play style for PLL. Let's be clear that every team was like, okay, we have to stop transition in the offseason. And every team put in that sneaky midfielder going to the box first, or like subbing a pole on at the end of their possession just to like be safe. I hope we go back to a little bit of the Wild West style that the first season of the PLL, made fans out of, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But if it does, I think IDA is the perfect guy to exploit that. He's going to get goals. He's going to, catch bomb outlets over the top from Troutner and get assists and cue breaks and all that stuff, all that great stuff. That's all great. I want to see that. I don't wish bad for any player, but I am surprised he got drafted given the other needs that the Redwoods have, which is a face-off guy. I don't care that they got both of them back. They don't want him.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. They also have possibly TD Erlin could be available that when they pick 4th overall in the college drafts.
Yep.
Other part of that question, we just talked about Randall possibly being a guy that falls to the Water Dogs, but who's a guy that one head coach was pretty much beaming to see fall in their laps on Thursday night?
How did every team in the league let Brian Cole go to the Whip Snakes of all teams? What were you thinking? I get that he didn't play great in 2020. He barely got, he barely got touches for that Cannons team. Barely. I mean, Randy Stats didn't play great for the Cannons either. Let's be real. There was no adjustment period. The MLL bubble was a lot worse than the PLL bubble in terms of preparing players. I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, there's a reason one of them's still around and one of them isn't. And that's one of them. They kind of just rolled out the ball and were like, hey, let's play. We're going to be here for like a week. Let's figure it out. That's not how you do it, man. That's not how it works. But Brian Cole has this. Brian Cole has the sauce, man. Like, he is so powerful in his stride. Like, you watch him run from one end of the field to the other. And it looks like, I mean, when you look at smaller players run and you're like, oh, that guy's really fast. Look how fast his legs are moving. And then you see bigger players like, for example, like Miles Jones, Sergio Perkovic. They're so tall and they're so big. When they run, it almost looks like they're just striding, right?
Mm-hmm.
Brian Cole looks like the little guy when he runs, but he has the giant strides. So all of a sudden, he's from one end of the field and the other, and the PLL short field is going to help him get those over the top balls. He's going to beat guys back. He's going to catch and fire, and he is a dangerous lefty. I mean, this guy was one of the best players in college in pro lacrosse in 2019. Just an unbeatable matchup nightmare. He's so big. He's so strong. He knows like what to do in the six. He's not just a transition threat. He can back down his guy. He can beat his guy for pace. Like he is one of the best midfielders that was available offensively in this entire draft pool. And the fact that he went in the third round, like every team should be ashamed of themselves except the Whipsnakes. Dead serious. You should be ashamed of yourself. Like
Brian Cole.
The Whipsnakes won the draft. And they're the champs.
Two-time defending champs won the draft.
That's why they're the champs. Yes, that's why they're the champs, because there's the thing that separates a lot of things, and I've been covering pro lacrosse from the jump. The thing that separates good teams from great teams is the utilization of their talent. The Whipsnakes have gotten the most out of the most. And that's a thing that you don't see often. Like there were teams in the old school MLL that did that were very good at it. The Outlaws teams, when they were crushing teams in the regular season and not getting it done in the playoffs yet, and then they made that leap when they acquired the necessary guys. The Whips have already made that leap and are already bossing the league. And then you see why. Because I love Charlie Hayes, man. I love him. He's like the meanest dude I've ever seen play lacrosse. And I hear like the stories about him, like locker room stories and like stories from people that like knew him are legendary. And I can't wait for a season where the PLL gets covered as much as they are. And we might get to hear like one or two come out of that with the Whips. And I'm looking forward to that a lot because I just describe him as like evil. He's just an evil dude on the field. I'm sure off the field, he's very nice. Although I heard that he just hates everything, which is great.
Hopefully he doesn't hate winning championships.
No,
I imagine they're lined up for one of those.
Yeah. He's still mad. He wasn't an All-American when he was a senior. Dead serious. Like he's still mad about it. It was years ago. He's still mad. Don't bring it up.
In my opinion, that's gotta be the mindset you gotta have then.
Yeah. I mean,
gotta be the mindset.
Yeah. You have to do that. It's, it carries across not just players, but in all facets of life. If you have that mindset, it'll eventually pay off.
Oh yeah.
I'm still waiting, but eventually it'll pay off.
The waiver wire officially opens today at 2 p.m. Eastern. The Cannons hold the first waiver spot. We are not 100% sure if this will be on a rolling basis or how this will all be executed, but we should find out in the coming days. Kyle, a few names that you could see get snatched up in the next day or two. Who are they and who's grabbing them?
Oh man. I think it's funny because like there's so much attack talent, but there's so little need for it. So for me, it's like, why isn't Andrew Q on a team? Why isn't Mark Cockerton on a team? Why isn't Shane Jackson on a team? Why isn't Dylan Malloy on a team? I don't know. I think it's probably because a lot of those teams that they would go to or that they already have previously existing relationships with have other plans. And that's okay. I feel like this waiver kind of period is a little weird because we're not sure, like teams are going to go into camp with 30-man rosters, right? Why wouldn't you just load up and then cut guys right before you bring them and bring in your college players as well?
That was my mindset. That was my thought around it too.
I just don't think they're going to do that though. And I think part of that is how the PLO does things very differently, where they're always looking, and this is one of the things they do really well, right? This is not a critique. This is just a fact. They look for like great stories. like Chris Hogan signing a contract is a great story in the mainstream. Maybe for like insiders and professionals and stuff, like it's not like the greatest story. But anything that brings eyeballs to lacrosse, by the way, I'm sorry to say this, and I'm someone that used to hate this, is good for lacrosse.
Absolutely.
I wrote about Hogan. I think that someone's going to take him. I think that he will go to camp. I don't know if he's going to play in games. But if he just goes to camp, right? It's a story.
Absolutely.
I'm surprised he wasn't drafted.
I tweeted out a hot take on Thursday afternoon saying, here's my bold prediction. He's going to get drafted. That's my prediction, but he didn't. But that was my thought. I was like, I feel like at some point in this draft, I was thinking Cannons maybe at that 17, but
I think the only way he would have got drafted is if it was 4 rounds.
Yeah.
And then someone would take a flyer on him in the 4th. I mean, their teams had 3 picks and they took flyers. You know, like that happens. Mm-hmm. I basically knew who the Cannons wanted and who they were going to take anyway. So I'm not surprised by anyone they took. A couple of the other teams, like I said, I mean, they're very predictable. And when I kind of prepped for this draft, and you'll see it in the article that goes up this week on Inside Lacrosse as well, I kind of didn't try to do an actual mock. I just looked at what the teams need, right? You're looking at just statistically, not even statistically, eye test, all that. You put it all together, talk to a couple of coaches, and you're like, all right, well, this team needs a faceoff guy. This team needs a short stick D-midi. The problem is in this draft, there was like 1 or 2 guys that could do that. It wasn't like 5 guys. It's not like the attack, right? Where there are like 5 guys just floating that could start, right? But you already have to serve the dog that you have chained up. You can't bring in new dogs. Like all these teams have 4 or 5 attackmen that have already experienced PLL. And like we said before, PLL is different. They
already have guys that have gotten used to the rules, gotten used to the shot clock, the short field.
Yeah, and they know the offenses. They know where to go. They may not. Maybe someone's better than them in that, but they already have the leg up in that they already have the established relationship, and the coaches know what to expect from them. I think the difference with this draft is there isn't a ton of guys that have MLO experience as coaches that are PLO coaches. There's a few. You know, you got Quirk, you got Staggs. Rubior was an assistant for a year. But like, and Nat was also an assistant. But you're looking at how to build your team and your own identity as a head coach now. And maybe you've seen these guys 100 times, maybe you haven't. But the guys that have familiarity with the player base most recently are going to get the most out of it. And I think that's absolutely Quirk and Rubior. But then again, Rubior does this. So I don't know. I think if people aren't careful, like Quirk is going to like outpick the crap out of everybody, which is not something I would have ever heard myself saying a year ago, because no one is harder on the Cannons' inability to draft good players than me. Like they're literally historically the last 10 years, one of the worst drafting teams. And you know what? I'm going to say this in all of sports.
Okay.
Just atrocious drafts, and not even always their fault. Like, listen, they drafted Teat and Sowers. That doesn't matter. They were never going to play for you. Like, people keep throwing that in my face. I'm like, okay. Didn't happen though, did it?
Didn't happen, yeah.
You didn't sign, did you? You know, so I think you're going to see, you know, the Cannons actually like use their proximity, for lack of a better term, to MLL and seeing it in person when other guys were already coaching other sport, you know, other leagues, and they have to rely on tape instead of eye test. And, you know, I think the Cannons are going to come out of this waiver wire with a better talented base than the other teams will.
We'll see how the Cannons do here as we get into the waiver wire. Again, they do hold that number 1 spot. And I think we should expect something, I'm thinking, by Tuesday, 5 p.m. So today, 5 p.m. or 2 p.m., I think, is when the deadline was for those waivers to be in. We should be hearing much more about some moves coming up. But that is going to wrap up our PLL Entry Draft recap for today. We will be talking much more about the draft with Coach Quirk in a little bit, as well as later on this week. Kyle, thank you so much for stopping by. We'll be back momentarily with Jordan Johnson to talk college lacrosse. Do not go anywhere.